Hello and welcome to another update. In this one, I'll be covering the latest updates from the front line. And what we can see is that there has been a few changes, very few changes to the front line. However, I looked through the deep state map and I noticed some interesting troop movements. First off, by the Vodiane area, there are some Storm Z units here by Vodiane. And according to a quick research I did, these units were rapidly developed units who were trained in a mix of combined arms and special operations, so that their main goal is to fight through heavily defensible areas, fortified areas, and in urban areas. So most likely these units are there to either fight in Avdiivka or generally to storm these areas, villages here to the west of Avdiivka. Then we have by the Svatova front, there's also some very interesting information here. First, we have the 90th Tank Division by Kreminna, and then we have the 4th Guards Tank Division by Svatova. So this is very interesting because we have two tank divisions here by the Svatova-Kreminna line. And I say that's very interesting because each tank division is estimated to have about 400 tanks. So that's about 800 tanks on this part of the front line. And that's just from those two. Then we have multiple brigades. So there's easily over 1,000 tanks on this part of the front line. Maybe even up to 2,000 as there are multiple divisions and regiments and brigades. Like there's a lot of units in this part of the front line. This is probably one of the front lines that is most heavily armed. So this could be an indication that the Russian forces are planning something here, especially with its close proximity to Belgorod. This could be an indication that the Russian forces are preparing something here with the fact that they have gathered these two divisions specifically, but generally all forces here in the Svatova-Kreminna line. And then according to the latest updates by Remily, he says that the armed forces of Ukraine may attempt a counteroffensive in the Zaporizhia region in the next 5 to 7 days. Baltitsky, the enemy is conducting serious artillery preparation, the head of the region said. The Ukrainian armed forces use British Storm Shadow missiles to attack the rear areas of the Zaporizhia region. So essentially what we're seeing is that the Ukrainian forces are launching a lot of artillery and Storm Shadow missiles in this part of the front line. And if we take a look at the weather, we can see that the rain will stop by Monday, which means that in a week's time, the mud would most likely have dried out, which would make the ground tough enough for armored formations to drive through them. So that could indicate the start of the offensive. So we may very well see the start of the offensive coming next week in the Zaporizhia region if we'll take a look at the weather and this artillery preparation. So this is very interesting. We'll have to have a look out for any troop gatherings in the area, as troops would usually gather in this point if they're planning on the offensive by the next week. And then finally, we have this article from a Danish news outlet. So essentially, this is 2 days old. This is a report where the news correspondent for this article is in Ukraine. He met with soldiers who had fought in Bakhmut. And one of those Ukrainian soldiers says they were 36 men, and in the first few minutes of them arriving inside the city, they lost 3 who were died and 6 who were wounded. In the first few minutes, not the first few hours, the first few minutes. They say that they essentially entered the city, and then they say the Russians were using gas. I haven't really seen any videos of them using gas. But essentially, they said, okay, they were using gas. This gas is slow. It will stick to the ground. It will not rise up. So they went up into the high-rise buildings and other buildings to avoid this gas. And then Russian missile strikes and artillery strikes and bombs just kept hitting these areas. So in the first few minutes, they entered a building, and then they were hit by artillery strike. And then the debris fell on top of them, killing 3 and wounding 6. So this shows to see that the Russians, the Wagner especially, definitely did not like any ammunition, and how terrible this battle actually was. According to these soldiers that this correspondent talked to, a lot of them actually say that the Ukrainian soldiers were used as cannon fodder. They were used to just be sent into Bakhmut and hold it at all costs. and that they were very dissatisfied with the tactics, and that they claimed they should have just pulled out and tried to encircle the city and attack the flanks instead of fighting within the city. They were just used as meat. So this is actually very interesting, and this is an actual article. I'll link it in the description. You can check it out. And it's very crazy to see the Ukrainian soldiers actually admitting to this in the news media, and a mainstream media article talking about this. So this is very interesting. As I was recording this video, the latest updates from the Avdiivka area, according to Remy, he says that the Russian forces have started attacking in the Avdiivka area, both in the southwest as well as in the northeast, so around the Krasnoarivka area and Sheverina area. He claims that there's been a lot of reinforcements to this area, and generally looking at Deep State map, we can see that there's a lot of units, especially in the Donbas region, but all through the country. So there's a new influx of Ukrainian forces being pushed into the front line, and at the same time there's a huge influx of Russian forces as well. And he also posted a video where there's a large batch of brand new T90Ms as well as Brem 1Ms in a hurry to the front line in vast expanses, which means that the Russian forces are quickly mobilizing troops, sending them to the front line, at the same time as the Ukrainians are preparing in Zaporizhzhia. So we are very close to the start of the new phase of the war. As we have been saying for many, many months, the fall of Bakhmut would be the catalyst that determines the next phase, what will happen, when will it start, and all of these things waited for when Bakhmut would fall. So the situation will right now stay fairly calm. There's a lot of artillery all over the whole front line, but most importantly, it seems to me like both sides are attempting to launch their own offensive at the same time, parallel to each other. The Russians in the Kharkiv area, the Ukrainians in the Zaporizhzhia area, and then it will be some sort of game of chicken where you'll have to see who will chicken out first. Will they both commit to advancing, or will they retreat to fortify the other parts of the front line? That is the real question. Who will be able to succeed? If the Russians, for example, manage to hold back the Ukrainian offensive and succeed, then they'll have major success. If they manage to achieve success in their offensive, but lose the land bridge between Zaporizhzhia and Crimea, that would be devastating for the Russian forces. If they manage to hold back the Ukrainian offensive and they also get stalled in the Kharkiv area, then it's essentially just a stalemate. If the Ukrainians manage to hold back the Russian offensive and succeed, then that would completely destroy the Russian army. So there's a lot of possibilities. There's a lot of things to consider. So it's a very difficult situation to predict. Both sides are preparing for the next phase of the war, and the next phase of the war will be unlike what we've seen so far. So make sure to stay tuned, leave a like and subscribe, and see you all next time.